Today on a Gryf Special Report edition of GTFO. With an expected influx of Korean players in the Overwatch League looking ahead towards Season 2, many fans of the league have begun to complain about the possibility of full Korean rosters and a league dominated by Korean players. I'll be responding to these complaints, as well as giving my own opinion on this so-called Korean epidemic. I'm Gryf, and let's break it down. Alright, so as I said in the intro, what I'm going to be talking about today is the idea of a so-called Korean epidemic, which is a bunch of Korean players are expected to be coming into the league for Season 2, and a lot of people don't seem to be happy about this. I guess where all this kind of started for me was a week or two ago, Michael, we are all familiar with Michael, he released a video. It was titled like the biggest problem with Overwatch League, and he talked about these Korean players coming into the league. I believe at the end of it, he did actually say that he was playing devil's advocate, but I do believe that that video did influence some opinions, or at least a lot of people did see it. I know that it was actually a topic that a viewer sent into him, so there's definitely some people who do believe in this sentiment, and it's something I've seen echoed actually a number of times across Reddit, Tumblr, Twitter, pretty much everywhere. And I guess the biggest catalyst for me making this video is that Jane, the coach of Team Canada, he's going to be coaching for Dallas Fuel in Season 2, a pretty well-respected member of the Overwatch League community. He actually said on his stream that he would not support an all-Korean Vancouver team. If you don't know, there's going to be a Vancouver team in Season 2. It's one of the expansion teams. We haven't really covered that lately, but I'm sure you've probably heard about it. But Jane said that he wouldn't support an all-Korean team, which was definitely interesting to me because I do like Jane. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a pretty upstanding member of the community. However, this kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I guess to answer the question right off the bat, plain and simple, is there a Korean epidemic? The answer is going to be no. It's a load of nonsense, in my opinion, but you know, if you're not looking for the short answer, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, which I'm sure you probably do, we're going to be getting into that. I do want to say first and foremost that Jane did apologize for his comments. He said, "Thanks for explaining how my words caused offense and harm. I'll do better in the future." He said that it didn't have to do with Korean players necessarily. He just wanted the Canadian team to be represented by Canadians. Which was interesting to me, and we'll be getting into why I think that's not necessarily the case closer to the end of the video. But first and foremost, I want to talk about why the whole idea in and of itself, in my opinion, is kind of just a load of bull. So the first thing is that fans of the Overwatch League, people who are followed this league, they want to see top-level Overwatch. This is the same for any sport. People want to see the best possible players. That's why teams don't have players who strictly come from the cities where they're located or the states where they're located or wherever they're located, because they want to have the best players on their team. They want to succeed, and the audiences want to see the highest quality gameplay, whatever the sport is. Specifically to Overwatch, people want to see the best possible Overwatch possible. This is why we don't have a console Overwatch League, because console is more difficult to play. It's not quite as high a level at the highest level, so people aren't going to be watching that. People don't want to see anything less than the top level of gameplay. And in this case, that's what Korean players are bringing. Not necessarily because they are inherently better in some way, but because South Korea has a much larger esports scene. It's able to foster new talent, bring up new players, and support them in a way that we don't really have here in the States, I know at least, and I don't think much of the Western scene has that. And for that reason, a lot of Korean players are just better at the game. They've had more of a support system to improve and play the game. We wish we had that here, but that's just not the case. So this doesn't make any sense to me that people are saying, like, we don't want Korean players, like, we don't want to see all Korean teams, because you want to see the top level of play. Everyone knows this. You want to see the best players. If those players happen to be Korean, then so be it. That's what we're going to be watching, and there's no issue with that, and I don't think the vast majority of the community takes issue with that, but there's definitely some people who do. And this high level of play kind of goes hand in hand with issue number 2, which is that people seem to think that if a team is all Korean, or if there's a lot of Korean players, people from that team's city won't cheer for them, or there's going to be less of an audience for the league because people aren't going to want to watch all Korean players. Doesn't make any sense, again, because people want to see their cities and their teams win, and they're going to support their teams regardless of the nationalities of the players. I mean, I can speak firsthand as a Philadelphia Fusion fan. We don't have a single American player on the Philadelphia Fusion roster. At least we didn't in Season 1. Didn't influence how I saw the team at all whatsoever. I was happy that the team was winning. I loved that there was, different, people from different regions and things like that. That was one of the coolest things about the Fusion, and I think that carries over to, all Korean rosters, is that people don't really care where these players are coming from. 2 of the most popular teams during Season 1 were the London Spitfire and the New York Excelsior, and what's also interesting is that those were probably the 2 best teams. The team that was most dominant, the New York Excelsior, over the course of the season, as well as your Season 1 champions, the London Spitfire. So not only were they very popular, they were also the most successful. So other teams are obviously going to be looking for Korean players after seeing the success and the popularity of those teams. It just makes sense, and there's no issue with it. But we can go even further than just those teams, because if we look at the top 3 MVP candidates in Season 1, they were all 3 of them Korean players. We had Jonak from the New York Excelsior, we had Carpe from Philadelphia Fusion, and Fisher from the Los Angeles Gladiators. So this kind of means 2 things then, which 1, Korean players are often the very best in the league. The top 3 MVP candidates, 3 of the best players in the league, were Korean. And 2, you have to know that this was a fan-voted competition. So, in the end, it was decided by a combination of both fan votes and Overwatch League personnel who would eventually decide it. But I believe Jonak was the top of the list regardless, and he was the one who got picked. But it doesn't even matter regardless, because these top 3 were just based on the fan votes. So those top 3 players voted by the fans were all Korean players. It's clear that the vast majority of the audience for Overwatch League takes no issue with Korean players, and just wants to see teams succeed, wants to see high quality Overwatch, loves, the personalities of some of these players, and they're extremely popular. The final thing that I want to get into is kind of the root of the issue, which is, is this racist? Which, it's a word that you see thrown around quite a bit, maybe in instances where it doesn't belong. But in this case, it's an important distinction to make between active and passive racism. In this case, it definitely feels like the latter. The reason for this is that these people are directly targeting Korean players versus the rest of the world, which is what kind of makes that distinction. Because if you look at what Jane said, for example, Jane could have just as easily said right off the bat, I would like the Vancouver team to showcase Canadian talent. That would be my preference. But he didn't say that. He didn't say what he supposedly meant about wanting Canadian talent. He specifically targeted Korean players and said he couldn't support an all-Korean Vancouver roster, which it has always been this way. There's this weird kind of semi-racist narrative of Korea versus the world that we've had since Season 1. For example, nobody took issue with the Dallas Fuel not being made up of players from Texas, or even having barely any players from the US whatsoever, despite them being, a Dallas-based team. They were kind of pitted as the Western team, the American team that could take on the Koreans in their early match against the Seoul Dynasty in Season 1. So it's been apparent since day one that there's this kind of stigma from certain people against Korean players. And again, this hasn't actually had a huge effect on the overall popularity of Korean teams and players, but what it has done, it allows this vocal minority to gain traction within the community, to have their opinions out there, and to have people, see those opinions and kind of be in agreement with those things, when in actuality, there's no basis in the reality of the situation. I do just want to reiterate one last time that anyone claiming that this isn't strictly about Korean players is either fooling us or themselves. Like I said, as a Philly Fusion fan, there was never an issue with a team not having a single American player. The issue has only begun to arise now when people started realizing just how many Korean players would be joining the league, from contenders, from different places. We've seen a lot of really good talent in contenders, and it's clear that there's going to be a lot of Korean players joining the league. And this fact that it's only coming up now with these Korean players joining the league makes it apparent that it strictly has to do with the fact that these players are Korean. It doesn't have to do with the fact that they're not from, whatever city, whatever country the team is based in. It's entirely about Korean players. So in the end, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the real epidemic here, it isn't an influx of Korean players, it's the growth of this toxic anti-Korean mentality that's kind of spreading rapidly since the end of Season 1, and it needs to stop now. These are some of the best players in the world. They deserve a spot in the Overwatch League, and I'm happily going to watch them play, regardless of what team they end up on, and I believe that everyone else should too. So that's going to be all from me today. Hopefully you did enjoy the video, as well as were either able to, be in agreement with me and see this side of things, or even if you have supported, some of these other opinions in the past about Koreans coming to the league, you're able to see that there is another side to things that maybe you should be a little bit more open, because that's really what this video is about. I want people to be open to these Korean players because they deserve it. They're incredible players, they're incredible talent, and I think the league's going to be better off having them here. So if you did enjoy, please remember to go leave a like on the video, drop a comment letting me know your thoughts down below, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Overwatch and Overwatch League content. Like I said, that's going to be all from me. So I'm Gryf, and this has been GTFO.